I typically do a terrible job of introducing people right away in the podcast, but since we're old friends, how many times have you been on the Blood Origins podcast, Jim?
I think this is my third time, and I'm happy to be back.
Third time I've been on a podcast with you in Arizona. It's like we're an old couple at this already, man.
Yep, and on top of that, was it last year or the year before where the Arizona Game and Fish Commission recognized you as the media partner of the year?
Yep, I appreciate that. I think it was 2 years ago already. It's amazing.
Yep,
Time flies like crazy.
well deserved.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, Jim Goughnour, welcome to the Blood Origins podcast again.
Sure, thank you.
Jim, you are still the chairperson of the commission of the Arizona Game and Fish.
So at the Arizona Game and Fish Commission, we rotate the chairmanship. So I have rotated off of being chairman to where I am a commissioner, but no longer the chairman. However, last year, when my commission was due to expire after 5 years, in Arizona,
That's right.
we have 5 commissioners. We serve a 5-year term. So theoretically, every year one goes off and one comes on. I was very humbling and very proud that I got lots of input from constituents asking me to reapply for a second term as chairman or as a commissioner. So I did that in August, September of last year. And in December, our new Governor Hobbs reappointed me to the Arizona Game and Fish Commission. And in February, the Arizona Senate confirmed unanimously for me to serve a second term. So I am a few months into my second term, first appointed under Governor Ducey back in 2019, and then Governor Hobbs in 2023.
So you just decided to, take more on another 5 years of easy work, right? It's an easy job, right? Everyone's happy with you all the time, right, Jim?
I don't know that. I always said you will never get rich being a commissioner because it is a volunteer position that we have. And it seems like as we go on in time, things get more difficult rather than easy. The problems just get more complex.
So why'd you do it then, Jim?
Why
did you say I want to throw my hat in the arena again?
A couple of reasons. The first one is, you look over your career. I'm 70 years old, plus 70 plus years old. And when you look back over your career, you think about things that you have real passions about and what really matters to you. And I think back that a lot of my career, a lot of the things that I was exposed to during my career led me to where I am today. I tell people I think I was born to be a commissioner for a game and fish agency. That was the first thing. The second part is I'm proud of what the past commissions have accomplished. And in talking to many of our stakeholders across the state and our wildlife conservation organizations, WCOs, a lot of encouragement, a lot of good relationships with there. So I feel good about doing it again. It's good for conservation and it's good for me.
So in the next 5 years, you're going to have a rotation of being on the chair again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that'll be into my 4th year when I will be the chairman again.
Okay, perfect. Well, hopefully between now and then, I have made it a priority to put it on my calendar to come and fly fish with you.
So I gave you, that's probably my third reason because we didn't make it during my first 5 years. So maybe we can put it on the bucket list for the next 5. But
we'll do it.
Wow, that would be a great honor to, while we have some great species here in Arizona. You and I have talked before about the Gila trout that are native to northern Arizona where I live. And the Apache trout, which is a wonderful recovery story, the first Arizona native fish that is being delisted from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife
Whoa, that's
endangered species
huge.
list.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, lots of good progress on those.
That's a cool story right there.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to get into like telling fishing success stories as well next with Blood Origins.
That could
Start
be a
there.
whole show.
Exactly. The Apache trout. That sounds amazing. Well, look, Jim, as it's not surprising to anyone, whenever we have you on, we're not talking about trivial things. We tend to like get stuck in with super controversial topics, and they're controversial because, you know, again, people are passionate about wildlife. People have strong opinions on things that matter to wildlife, and there's lots of different ways to do things. And so Arizona, just to set the context for what we're about to talk about, Arizona has been involved in the classic big tag auction situations, wild sheep and others, in which you guys give a tag to an organization on your behalf. And Arizona is a very unique model. It's a 100% model, which is another key thing to this whole argument. It's not that you were saving money, 10% or whatever it was. It's a 100% model that they would raise the money, auction it off, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $750,000, and all that money would go back to you, and one person would get to hunt. And you guys decided, we want to do something different.
Correct.
All right. So that's what we want to talk about today. And so let's just rewind the clock a little bit to give everyone context on the situation that's happening in Arizona. You have a thing, and I think you're going to colloquialize it as SBGT, which is your special big game tag.
Correct.
What is that, Jim? Let's start there. What is the SBGT?
So this really has a long history. You're correct, Robbie. It goes back to 1984. And in 1984, the Arizona state legislators established our special big game raffle tags, big game tags, and it is ARS 17-346. And in that statute, it talks about the things you just described. Yes, the commission can donate up to 3 tags for each species that we have in the state of Arizona, big game species that we have. Now, over the years, that has changed. And today we're sitting here, we have 10 big game species identified. So 30 tags.
Do you still give out 30 tags?
30 tags goes out every year, donated by the commission.
Yep.
And so, as you stated, it goes out to different wildlife conservation organizations, WCOs, and they sell those tags. The statute does not talk about auctions or raffles or non-auction formats, anything like that. It just simply states that the commission is authorized to donate those tags for sales. However, as you stated, all of those dollars, all of the proceeds from those tags comes back to the Game and Fish Department. And the brilliance of this whole collection of statutes is that the Game and Fish Department is then required by statute to put those dollars back into landscape for those species. So as an example, if dollars are raised for, say, a mule deer tag that gets sold, and one of those tags, say it sells for $750,000, which it did a couple of years ago.
That's right.
That means that $750,000 comes back to the Arizona Game and Fish Department, and it is spent on wildlife management and habitat of mule deer. We cannot take those mule deer proceeds and spend them on any of the other big game species, elk, turkey, mountain lions. They must be used for that species to improve those herds. So that's the brilliance of it, and that's why it has been working so well for so many years.
So, Jim, why then change? If it's been working so well for so many years, and this is how well, you sent me a number, north of $51 million has been raised. And yes, absolute freaking kudos to those legislatures back in 1983, 1984 that had this brilliant idea. We've got great resources. We need more money to make them even better.
Right.
Let's create this special big game tag, auction, raffle, whatever it is. And lo and behold, 40 years later, $51 million has come back to the state for specific wildlife conservation restoration programs. Why
Right.
change that, Jim?
You're right. Over the period of time, think back to 1984. A lot of your listeners might not be even old enough to remember that. But during those times, there was not a lot of money going into conservation. The Arizona Game and Fish Department is a self-funding agency, which means that the Arizona Game and Fish does not receive any tax dollars from the state.
They have no allocation in the state budget, is what you're saying.
Correct. So self-funding, back in that time, people were looking for ways to increase dollars for conservation. And this wasn't unique to Arizona. This was all states, especially states throughout the West. So they needed something to raise these funds to help conservation and to help grow. We all wanted to do that. There was just no dollars to do it. So auction tags was a convenient and for the time a very good way to raise lots of dollars on these programs. So Arizona and lots of Western states signed up to do this. And it worked great for several years. But if you think about how technology has changed, the ability to communicate, email addresses, social media explosion, all of those things have made easier contact with large populations of people.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot has changed since the 84.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that as long as I've been on a commission, this topic has been around. And it's been some frustration on the part of myself and other commissioners for a couple of reasons. And the first and foremost reason is the North American model for wildlife conservation. A lot of your listeners know this, that there are 7 tenets that were put in place almost a century ago that talks about the ethics, the model, the ethos of what hunting should be. And one of those tenets is very clear, and it talks about using the democracy of wildlife management. And it specifically states that hunting access cannot be restricted to the wealthy, the prestigious, or landowners. So our forefathers kind of saw this coming. And what's happened over the years, Robbie, is that the people that end up paying the big dollars for these auction tags turn out to be the same people over and over again. In Arizona, we gave some numbers like 2 hunters in the past 15 years in Arizona, 2 hunters have accounted for 30% of the mule deer tags, went to just 2 hunters. 25% of the elk tags went to 3 hunters in our state. So it turns out that there is a very few people that were purchasing these tags. So speaking as one commissioner, I'm not speaking on behalf of all the Arizona state commissioners here. I'm just speaking for one commissioner. That's a problem for me. We're looking at the North American model. It specifically states that you can't have democracy if you have just the same wealthy group of people buying these tags. The second piece that
Jim, before you get into the second piece, I want to explore that North American model premise for a second. It is a 100-year-old premise, okay? And when it was created, I don't know if they were thinking, again, it's a great model. The resource belongs to the people, belongs to the public, okay? But in today's day and age, value of wildlife essentially keeps wildlife around. And so the idea that all wildlife belongs to all people, I think it's a misnomer. And here's why I say it's a misnomer. Because I think that there's lots of situations that in which you've got private landowners, right? People that have worked hard for their money to be able to purchase a piece of property, and they happen to have wildlife on their property that they care for, and they put habitat on the ground for. And if they say, well, that wildlife actually, you don't, yes, you're helping, and here's this, it's like the E+ system in New Mexico, right? There's a landowner tag that you get for it. If we disincentivize that system, I don't know if that's good or bad for wildlife. And I think that's maybe where I'm coming from in terms of when I think about the North American wildlife conservation model, is like, I get it. But is the bigger question, what is best for wildlife, a much more important question, specifically in today's day and age, in which we've got, I keep using this, but we no longer have seas of habitat with abundant wildlife opportunity and resources and public land and islands of humanity. It is reversed. We have islands of habitat and wildlife that are getting pressured and pressured and pressured. And you've got the sea of humanity. And so you want to do everything you possibly can to save and help wildlife. I don't know if I was making any sense there, but that's just in my brain. That's where I land with this topic.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, and that's part of the debate that we're having. Is everybody is making the assumption that there is going to be a reduction in conservation dollars that are available, and if we look at our 10 species that we issue the special big game tags for, there's only 3 of them that the raffles that are conducted today, only 3 species don't make as much money using a raffle versus an auction. So 7 of the 10, they're good with this. We're only talking mule deer, elk, and sheep in Arizona, where we can't raise enough money. But here's an interesting concept. One of our WCO organizations 2 years ago or 3 years ago developed a new idea to sell tags. And they called it a competition. And it was performed in a social media, so it reached across the country to lots of people. And it was kind of an idea where you vote for a certain candidate, and the person that collected the most votes ended up winning the competition, and therefore was issued the tag. That format, Robbie, raised $1 million. The Arizona Game and Fish had committed or had donated 1 mule deer tag to that competition. It was actually coupled with some other winning items, second and third prize. So in that year, the commission agreed that we would accept $500,000, $500,000, which was $100,000 that we had ever raised for a mule deer tag up to that time. We have long passed that number, but at the time, that $500,000 was more money was ever raised for a mule deer tag. And that's what the commission accepted. The organization came and gave us a check for $500,000. So there are other options out there, and those options will raise more money than auctions will. I think as we continue to go forward, we will not lose money in this thing. We will surpass where we are today in these different formats. And a lot of our organizations are working feverishly to develop new concepts that are more equal and more fair to the average hunter out there. It's actually one of the points. The Arizona Game and Fish Commission, we represent all hunters. We don't cater to rich people just because they can put a lot of money into one of these tags. And then we just the term here we use is hold our nose because we're violating our ethics so that we can make a bunch of money. We're looking for opportunity to make as much as more money and still be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say that we've done this ethically.
Jim, so I just want to sort of tease apart and maybe whether you've thought about it or not. So this idea of, so it sounds like you've already got 7, correct me if I'm wrong, 7 of the animals that you have in the state do a raffle system already, like pronghorn, mountain lion, all of that kind of stuff. It's their
Yes.
WCO is operating under a raffle basis, right?
Right.
I'm assuming those WCOs under the raffles are 100% model too, right?
100% what?
The 100% return model based on the stature, right?
Yes.
Why wasn't the mule deer competition that raised $1 million, why wasn't it under a 100% return model?
Because it wasn't the only prize in the competition. The mule deer tag was coupled with a week-long hunt over in New Mexico. It was coupled with, I think, an OHV or something like that. So we had to figure out a way to apportion the pieces of it. So we went through a formal process with the commission to say how much of those proceeds would we deem to be brought to the sales by this mule deer tag. And the commission decided that it would be $100,000 because it was $100K more than we had ever raised for a mule deer tag. So that's how we got to that number.
Is the thought process moving forward here in the raffle system? I guess number one, just to reiterate, the number one thought here is that anybody can win it.
Right.
Okay. But are you going to operate it? And again, you can tell me if you cannot release this information yet or not. But are you going to operate it like a raffle, or are you going to operate it like the competition?
We hope both, and we hope to get new ideas. As we investigated some other ideas, Robbie, the gaming laws, as you know, are very specific, and they vary state by state. And it's very complicated when you start looking at different ways to sell these things. A competition is one, a raffle is one, and there are other ideas that are being evaluated. All of these have to go through a legal process to make sure that they are legal. And then we have to look at sometimes all different states because individual states have different rules pertaining to these things. So if you did a competition, even it could be legal in 40 of the 50 states as an example, and those are the ones that you would have to cater to. So our quest or our ask of our WCOs is let's put our brains together and try to come up with different ideas to do this so it can be more equitable. And I'll say it's working very well. Our organizations here in Arizona, at the very beginning, they were upset over this. They were concerned that it was going to impact the wildlife that we have in the state, the wildlife management opportunities we have in the state. I don't think that's going to happen personally.
Well, you can understand it, right? We've talked about it. If it ain't like to be the most American I can be. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, but it was broke. From an ethics standpoint, it was broken. And so that's basically what it came down to is, who do we represent as commissioners? We always say that the job of the commissioner is pretty easy. Our job is to listen to all inputs from all sides and then make a decision based on what's best for wildlife in the state of Arizona. Pretty simple task for our job. So if we say, well, we're going to follow that model, except when it comes to these tags, and then we're going to listen to a handful of people, and we're going to ignore the 500,000 other hunters that we have in our state, just because it brings in a lot of money in this case, that shouldn't be what drives us. There's another reason that I voted for this that I think is important. The first one is a violation of the North American model, in my opinion. The second one is what we talked about. We represent all the hunters, the average Joe six-pack hunters. We have to answer to all of them every year. The third one is this concept of trophy. In the state of Arizona, back in 2016 or 2017, a former commission, before any of us were on the commission, removed the word trophy from every Arizona statute, every Arizona rule, and every game and fish document that we have in place. And the commission was straightforward about this. They said, we don't recognize trophy hunting in the state of Arizona. Hunting is about the things that all of us love. Number one, putting the best available protein meat on your table. It's about the heritage of hunting. It's about taking kids and grandkids out onto the landscape, teaching them how to hunt, how to be hunters, how to be anglers, and to build that heritage. It's pretty simple why we do that. There are a portion of people who believe in trophy hunting that they want to do, but the Game and Fish Commission nor the department, we don't manage our herds for trophies. We manage healthy herds that can be carried forward into the future. That's our job as a commission and department. It's not to grow bigger antlers on an elk or a deer that's going to attract a bunch of people to go do. It's just simply something we don't know. When we have people come and speak before the commission, if they ever use the word trophy, and we've had people do that, we will literally interrupt that person and inform them that we don't recognize trophy hunting in our state. That's not what we do here. So selling these auction tags to the highest bidder leaves the commission in kind of like a conflict. On one hand, we say we don't recognize trophy hunting, but somebody is not going to pay $750,000 for a mule deer tag for the hunt of a lifetime because they need to put meat on their table. They're doing that so they can get their name in a record book, so they can have the biggest elk or mule deer that was harvested that year across the state of Arizona or across the country. So there was a conflict there for the commission in supporting that. And so that played into at least my decision to say, yes, we should not be catering to a small group of people when we're violating the ethics. This is not what hunting is in Arizona. And then we have a lot of people that buy licenses. In the state of Arizona, the license sales for hunting and fishing has been increasing for many years. A lot of states are suffering through decreasing. We don't have that in Arizona. So we answer to a lot of people, not just a few select that are capable of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for tags to hunt in Arizona.
But there is another conflict here, and the conflict here goes back to the original premise of why this was set up in 1984, which is you do not have a state allocated budget. You have to raise money. And these big tags raise big money for you to operate. So what happens if you can't raise the money, Jim?
What happens if we can't raise the money? So just on average, and I think that the Game and Fish Department went through this very well back in March when we were making the decision to go do this as a commission. And they talked about how much money goes into the wildlife management of species over and above what money comes in through these tags. These tags account for about 50% on each species that we look at, about 50% of the dollars that really go into management of them.
Okay, that sounds like a huge amount.
And so that's a huge amount. So then if we have 50% of the dollars that go into wildlife management are coming through this process of sale of tags, through an auction, then you develop a different way to do it. And let's just, for simplicity, let's just say you develop a raffle. And if the raffle brings in, pick a number, 90% of what the auction would have brought in, you didn't lose a lot of money. I mean,
but you still lost money, Jim. Especially for wildlife. If we're pushing, that's every dollar lost is a dollar not put into wildlife conservation.
You could make an argument that we're not going to get that, but for 7 of our 10 species, it's not an issue. For the ones that it is, we are working very hard to develop ways to recover all of those dollars so we don't have them. I promise this is going to be the same debate as we've had with trail cameras in the past. When we look back 5 years from now on this decision by the commission, because there is no doubt in this commissioner's mind that we are on the right side of this debate. When we look back in 5 years, we are making more money than we were on auction tags. People will say it was the right thing to do. Think of the power of all of the Joe six-pack hunters buying a raffle tag or entering competition or coming up with one new format, as opposed to one guy who's willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for a tag. We will make far more money in the long run in this field.
Jim, you never want to be in a situation where someone, and I highly doubt somebody would do this, but in 5 years' time, somebody goes, well, I told you so. Right? But I think that every great change in wildlife conservation comes with risk. And you are in the enviable position to have to make those big decisions. I would say, just from my perspective and my opinion, not that it matters much, but the competition landscape in the social media world, you just look at that very carefully. It sounds wonderful, but there's ways that people can put money behind themselves in those social media platforms to increase the pipe, because that's what Meta and Instagram and all those things look for, right? It's a pay-to-play platform. You got to remember, social media is a pay-to-play platform. So I don't want you to get into a situation where you've moved away from a pay-to-play scenario and entered into a social media world where someone with a little bit of cash, not Joe Sixpack, but me, I'm saying, you know what? It's worth me putting $5,000 into paid advertising of myself to garner people's attention to get me to win this thing.
Yep, no one's denying that. We've heard this and had this debate before. Our goal is to get as many people involved as we can. So you could put $5,000 in to promote your post on a social media. But what you don't know is your buddy down the street put $10,000 into his exposure of doing that. And even if you have raffles, we all know raffles raise a lot of money. The chances of not winning are great, but somebody's going to win. And for me, I can't wait for the day that we have a Joe Six-Pack Hunter that wins one of these tags, and that we can go do a whole article or a whole video of that person's entire hunt, so that we can see the average person doing a hunt of a lifetime who gets to do that only one time, and it's a thrill for everything that he can do, as opposed to the same guy doing it for the sixth time in our state. It devalues the whole process of what we're trying to do here. And we've already decided that, whoever wins some of these tags and gets out there, we're looking for the opportunity to go promote that person as an average hunter. That's what we're looking out for. And that's what we're telling our hunting community here in Arizona and across the country. We're supporting the average guy. We're hoping the average guy will support our commission decision. So when these different competitions or raffles or whatever they are come online, hopefully everybody will go out and spend their $20 or whatever the amount is for entry into these, and help us promote this and win it. Because that's how we're going to raise more money than we're getting through one person at an auction.
Well said. Well said. As I said, big decisions require big risks, and you guys have certainly been in the game of doing that for quite some time. So hats off to you. Obviously very controversial. You guys are the first ones doing this. And at the end of the day, regardless of what model you believe in, whether it's an auction model or this competition model or raffle model or whatever it is, honestly, the way that I look at it, and I've already said it already in the podcast, is I take one step back and I'm like, if this is good for wildlife, for my kids' futures, then I'm good with it.
Yep.
That's it.
That's I think we can all support that. That is well said also. That's where all of us want to be. We want to find the best solutions for everything that we do. And then just for a clarification, and I think you know this, Robbie, but maybe for your listening audience, in June, actually in March, the Arizona Game and Fish Commission decided that we would allow one more year of auction tags. So of those 3 tags that we issued for what's called the 2024-2025 cycle, 2 of those tags must be a non-auction format, and one of them is permitted to be an auction format. So you'll still hear about Arizona auctions for another year.
Which one is going to be auction? Have you guys decided which one?
We did. At the June meeting, we went through and we did our allocation of who's going to get what tags.
Okay.
So for the 3 species that we're talking about, the sheep tag is going to be auctioned this year by the Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep. The elk tag is going to be auctioned by the Arizona Deer Association, or I'm sorry, the Arizona Elk Society. They got that auction tag because we have one there. And I got to refer to my note here for the
mule deer tag.
The mule deer tag, that's the one that went to the Arizona Deer Association.
Okay, so all 3 tags went to Arizona WCOs.
Yes. And that's part of the criteria. The commission uses the criteria for who qualifies, how do we prioritize these tags. So for this upcoming year, 2025, 2026, there'll be one auction tag available for that. And then the following cycle is when everything will be a non-auction type format. So we have another year to come up with ideas, to vet them, and get them announced out there to the public.
Yeah, 100%. All right, good stuff. Well, we'll stay informed. We'll stay in touch. We'll keep watching. And as I said, I don't think anybody with the decision being made doesn't want it to not succeed. And so we want it to succeed, and let us know if we can help you in any way.
Yep, appreciate that. And, two shout outs I want to give, Robbie, if I can. One is to the Arizona Wildlife Conservation Organizations, even though they have concerns about this. And by the way, this is no different than the trail cameras or the predator shooting contests. There was lots of debate about if it
what
was
was their major concerns. What were their major concerns? That the money wouldn't come back in? The same money wouldn't come in?
Major concerns were, yes, their impact to their particular species because of less dollars.
Makes sense.
And as we walked through different ideas, and one organization is an example who traditionally had a auction tag, actually applied for a raffle tag this year because they came up with an idea that they think is going to be viable. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this national organization does with one of these non-auction tags. It's going to be a bellwether kind of sale of that tag. So kudos to our organizations here in Arizona who have concerns, but are working with the commission and department to come up with other ideas. And then my second comment is to you. Blood Origins does an excellent job of helping organizations, giving opportunities to explain why decisions are being made, especially the tough decisions that commissions have to make across the country and across the West. The very first day this thing came up in March, you reached out to me asking about what was going on. And I appreciate your willingness to help with this, your understanding, not railing to one side or the other on a debate. We sometimes don't get that when we speak with some other social media and some other outlets, especially here in Arizona. So thank you, Robbie, for all you do for conservation. And you've helped Arizona in the past in a mighty way, and look forward to that support in the future.
Well, appreciate you, Jim. Good friend, and very much looking forward to that trout lesson one day on the side of a stream, okay?
Any day you're in Arizona, especially in northern Arizona, I'm available. I will adjust whatever schedule.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.